Well, there it is. Hi guys, welcome to another Warcraft 3 Reforged video. This time, I'm going to be covering Arcane once again with one of these videos. It's a reaction video, yeah, and welcome. We're going to react to all of the models in Warcraft 3. So, buckle in, it's going to be a good one. So, first thing you do is you pop over to Arcane's channel and you press that like button. It's what you guys should be doing right now. It's the first thing you do when you click on a YouTube video. Just press the like thing, it's done, and then you can move on. So let's take a look at the Reforged map with all unit models of Warcraft 3. So, Arcane's going to be covering this. I'm going to mute it though, and I'm just going to play some music so that way I can give commentary in the background. And he's essentially going to spend this video talking about all the models and doing his bit. Otherwise, I would just be purely copying him at this point. And, you know, it's a little bit cheeky, isn't it, really? I did ask permission, somewhat. And he said it's okay for me to steal his content, so that's kind of what we're doing right now. Let's make sure we are definitely up to snuff. You can see a whole bunch of models here, beginning with Dagren the Orcslayer, or Dagren the Orcslayer. Which way do you think it's pronounced? He's the dude with, you know, Tyrion's sword. God, whenever I want the names, they always sort of just drop off. Lifebringer. He's the Orcslayer. Come on. Mograin's sword. I know who all these swords and stuff like that belong to, but as soon as I try to think of the actual name, boom, it just drops off the top of my head. So he's going to be going over a whole bunch of these models. He's just essentially taken all of them and placed them next to one another, so you can sort of see the comparisons. I've done previous videos where we've gone over the models, but this is one where you're actually going to sort of see them sort of like in their standing animation and how they breathe, how they flow. So beginning with Dagren, there he is. That is a mighty looking paladin indeed, very powerful. And he's going to start attacking his brethren, Lord Nicholas Buzan. You can actually see the name tag really clearly, actually, hovering over there. So that looks like a feature that Blizzard want to implement. You got the level, you got the health bar, you got the mana bar, you got the name above. So you can clearly see who is who, what is going on. So Lord Nicholas does not look like he enjoys this. He didn't sign up to be attacked by his fellow paladins. Looks like he's had a rough time. So, scrolling through the buildings. These are a lot of the neutral creeps. He's just basically chucked everything onto the map. So, a little bit skittish as he's going around. He's probably explaining it in the video at the moment. So I'm just going to see what the next thing is that he focuses on. Looks like it is the Forgotten One, which you can basically fight against in the campaign. And those are some very fluid tentacles. My goodness. They are flopping around everywhere. Look at them. They actually look like they're enjoying themselves. They're like, yeah. Just having a great time, chilling out here. The Forgotten One looks absolutely gross and grotesque. Those eyes just sort of like asymmetrically sort of looking in different directions and stuff. Oh, there was a little bit of FPS drop there when zooming in. This is one of my concerns. We don't see the FPS. You can see it's a little less smooth when zooming in. This does tend to happen in Warcraft 3 as well, let alone with the updated model graphics. So you can see all the lovely detail at the top of the Forgotten One too. He's making the two Arthuses fight against one another. One with the hammer and one with Frostmourne. Those little tentacles are, well, I say little, they're not very little, are they? But they do look freaking awesome, especially compared to the original models. The original models are very basic. So, that Cthulhu, I want to call it Cthulhu, but it's not really Cthulhu. It's just another sort of malignant old god, or at least a section of it. So, it does attack as well. It has a fireball attack, which it also had in the original. So you got to see a little bit of that. You can see some ships, dragons, a Karma who's permanently stealthed. You could say that's a little bit broke. Once again, we are incredibly zoomed in on the portrait. I'm gonna make an assumption that this is the angle that Blizzard are going for, or it's just something to do with the engine and how the models are placed versus the portrait. Because it is incredibly zoomed in, but it does. Yeah, it's just like I said, it just needs to be like almost 15 to 20% zoomed out. I don't know whether it's intentional or it's just because it's an unfinished product currently at this point. These are the Draenei buildings where you would produce. I like the icons for the Draenei. They do look on point. The Demolisher is the same icon though. You got the rally point there. You can see Immolation at the bottom right. There's the Draenei Seer. He's the good one. He's got Brilliance Aura, Healing Wave. It's pretty amazing, to be quite frank with you. There's the Nether Drake. So they got a very shark-like face, which is kind of cool because it differentiates them from the other dragons. Because I was wondering about that. In the original Warcraft 3, they look very... is opaque the right word? I'm not entirely sure. They're basically somewhat see-through, but dark. And it's kind of hard to distinguish them. Whereas this, it looks like they've got a very fleshed out look. There's the Centaur tents, Murloc huts, more Tauren tents. And the pig! Spirit pig. That is a pig, alright. Furbolg huts. You can see more of these. Nerubian cigarette. That looks kind of detailed. It looks like it's being reduced in size in a way, because you can imagine that being blown up to a massive size and then being called a temple. There's the ice troll huts, so the troll stuff. I love those golems so much. I really do. He's going to move on to the flesh golem though, which I keep thinking looks like it's from another game. It does throw me off. The ships look incredible. That's really cool. So much detail. And they've got a really neat movement to them. Huh. The Juggernaut should really be in the ocean, but it looks like it could be a land vehicle as well, like a hovercraft. Taking a look at some Iridars. So these are like the warlocks, the sorcerers. You can get these in like outland maps, mercenaries. I like the chains. I like the skull. This is Iridar Warlock. Very scary. He's got... oh my goodness, a very beefy look. The original portrait, of course, so that hasn't been finished yet. But he's got Finger of Death. You know he's not to be trifled with. This can throw down Infernals, which is that icon at the bottom right. That's the Infernal Juggernaut. The Queen of Suffering, which is probably one of the most OP level 10 mobs because she has Charm, and it's got an incredibly short cooldown. Ha! He made this one attack specifically. He just wants to see that whip in action. She's also got the Aura. So, she looks really neat. I like the portrait. Oh yeah, there you go. So it's the same one, just skin slightly different. Vile Temptress, all taking out one another. But some have daggers, others have whips. Oh, the whip sort of bounces back and forth. So it's kind of similar to their World of Warcraft equivalent. And then you got Void Walker. This guy looks very scary. I think that's Monsoon and Devour Magic. His portrait is kind of... odd, but I don't think that's finished. It very much reminds me of the Protoss Archon units. Oh, I like the portrait better for Infernal there. He looks a bit dopey, but the Infernals were never supposed to look smart. The Doomguard obviously is not finished at the moment, but very interesting take on it. Big, beefy. I quite like it. It reminds me a little bit of Balrog from Lord of the Rings, which is what he was really based off, let's face it. If you look at the two comparisons, the original Warcraft 3 model. So, they got a bit of a gargoyle look to them, though, now. A little bit more the Doomguards, whereas the original ones are slightly wider. The Overlords, so those are like the Fel Guards. Demonic Foot Soldiers. We got Centaur Calm. It's got War Stomp. They really made the Centaur their own personality and race. Like, a lot of them just had this kind of flappy jaw and just looks ever so slightly different with a bit of, like, I don't know, a helmet or something. But here, they actually almost look like a playable race. Do you see what I mean? Like, it feels like each character's obviously looking very unique and different now. Whereas you compare them to the original models, not so much. The same can be said a lot for the neutral creeps. Like, many of these trolls have got a very distinct look if you really go into the detail. Like, the way they're hovered over or hunched over. Even the two priests actually have sort of different weapons. And one's got more back armor to it. Whereas I think in the original, there's very little difference between the Shadow Priest and the High Priest, except for one being just a lot bigger than the other. I can't remember completely off the top of my head, but I think there's more difference at the moment in these updated models. Forest Troll. We can see the Furbolgs underneath. Oh, that's more zoomed out. So the portrait there is a lot more zoomed out. But then that one's zoomed in. They kind of like punch forward for the animation, which is very reminiscent of how furbolgs behave. Look how beefy they are. They look fantastic. I love their fur, their armor. They're one of the better models, definitely by a long shot, that still fit into this Warcraft universe. Whereas some of these, there have been some complaints that perhaps some of it seems like it's not quite from the actual Warcraft universe. Now we've got Woofs the Penguin. Oh my goodness, look at it. It's got this cool waddle to it as well. Harpies. There's the Harpy Queen. Very vicious, very sharp and bitey. And then you've got the Wild King next to it, which is a very unique take on the Moon King. It definitely looks like it. It's just completely different to what I used to. But I quite like them. They look really cool. You could totally imagine playing those as a custom hero, couldn't you? Like, they stand out as their own character. They are quite similar, though. So it's really the one model. But that one model itself is very, very different to what we've got in the past. But I think it can still work. That was a beefy war stomp. You see the timer. Felboar. Looks like he's got mutton chops, which is kind of fitting for a pig. Berserk Wild King. Then we got Razormane Chieftain. Hellbolder. Oh, look at all those spikes, those quills. And they look quite fluid as well. They're not just sort of like, I don't know, force there in a sort of very rigid manner. They look like they sort of flow. We got the Brood Mother. Very scary spiders. Very vibrant and colourful, which is very good. Because that's what I prefer the models to look. I want the models to look vibrant and colourful. That way we can differentiate them a lot easier. Because otherwise, it just kind of becomes a bit blah and blends in too much. We've got green dragons, bronze dragons, blue dragons, frost dragons really, black dragons and red dragons. Those red dragons. Look at that portrait. Oh my goodness. That red dragon is so scary, man. In a good way. Like, I actually kind of like the scariness of that. Some of them, I didn't like the monstrosity. Also, the June Worm looks kind of cute. Obviously not quite finished yet, that portrait, but I like it. Then the lightning lizard, looking kind of aged, but wise and sort of rugged, as if it's used to the tough terrain. So those kind of work for me. Stormworm looks a bit derpy, but I quite like it as well. I don't mind that. If it's on like an animal or something like that, it can work. The Murloc's looking really incredible. Look at that face. Those faces are incredible. So as we get more and more of this information, like some of these models we've seen before in previous videos, but it feels like some of them almost look like they look better. They look even better than the pictures that I've seen. So we don't know what build this currently is, so it could even be like a while back. So obviously more and more improvements are done over time. Goodness knows how hard the team have been working to create all of the models for all of the units, because bear in mind, World of Warcraft is responsible for pretty much why Warcraft 3 is so good. And a lot of you are going to go, oh, but World of Warcraft kind of killed Warcraft 3. And in a way, yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's like a catch-22 sort of situation. Female satyr, by the way. But we wouldn't have got so much with Warcraft 3 if Blizzard weren't preparing for World of Warcraft. They wanted to flesh out all of these races, all these characters, these classes, how they look, how they behave, how they sound. And that's why we got so much with Warcraft 3. If you compare it to like StarCraft 2 or whatnot, you get tons with Warcraft 3. And they've obviously had to go to the work of just updating all of these models and giving them their own personality, which for the most part they seem to have done a really good job of. That dog just sort of chilling out. I like that. Oh, he's turned him into fire. Oh my god. Could we please have that portrait of that satyr not change? Please do not fix that. I want that in the game. There's the Plague Treant, looking pretty much spot on for something out of a Tim Burton movie. Absolutely horrific. He's got that kind of green, sort of aboministic... there you go, I said istic. I managed to throw that in there. Corrupted Treant. I like how fierce the face looks, how sharp and pointy. You know that's not a friendly Treant, that's for sure. If the purple wasn't a giveaway. I might cover that at some point, Kakpa, but at the moment I'm just trying to keep up with everything else that's coming out, which is hard enough as it is. Kil Jaeden, wow, that face. I still feel like there's a bit more work to be done on that face, but I like the initial sort of template for it. There's Dalaran Reject. Oh! I don't know. I don't think that's finished yet, but... No, that's definitely not finished. But it's kind of cool. You can sort of see the potential. There's the Dalaran mutant, so the face is sort of blending in with his shoulder pad. So there's stuff to be done. I like the way it's swaying around. Definitely gives that zombie vibe. Oh, that movement as well. Yeah, that is very similar to how the originals actually act and behave. The originals are more pale-skinned. I mean, not necessarily the Dalaran mutant. The Dalaran mutant's like a purplish tinge. But anyway, the actual zombie is like pale. There's the wraiths. They look very Victorian-esque. You know, like in BFA, there's that sort of like haunted area on the map that the Alliance sort of have to venture in. I can't remember. Drustvar or something like that. And it reminds me of kind of the ghosts that are in there. The Fire Revenant's looking really good here now. I feel like I can identify it just a little bit better when it's flowing and moving. It was when it was like a static picture. It felt like the whole costume just almost blends into itself and it sort of overlaps. If you can sort of see the character moving, you can see the individual parts flowing. I like the Revenants. They definitely look very cool. Very Spectre-like. Sludge monstrosity. Very goopy and gross, which is basically how it should look. The portrait is of not finished. The Skeleton Archer, oh my goodness, that's horrific. Yeesh. I wouldn't want to be one of those. They don't look anywhere near as cute as the Warcraft 3 equivalents. That's the Flaming Bow one. So you can see the one on the left is actually like the original Warcraft 3. And that one's like the more updated model. But I'm talking about the portraits here. So he's taking a look at how the bow lights up on sort of like both the top and the bottom. Attacking with the Sludge Monstrosity. That's a really cool attack. Just that lunging of the long neck. I'm liking that. Oh, that's a meaty swing. It's got this kind of ghost-like flow to its attack as well, which makes it a little bit hard to judge where it's attacking from because it moves so much. But it looks cool. Whether that works gameplay-wise, though, is another matter. Especially that selection circle being so small. That's, yeah, Crushing Wave. It's got Frost Armor, which looks a lot more skullish. Not entirely sure what that icon is, unless it's a water elemental. It could be a water elemental, but it's kind of a strange icon for it. You got Death Coil, you got Raise Dead, and Animate Dead, which hasn't been finished or is maybe slightly HDified. There's the Dark Wizard, so these are like the neutral renegade wizards. The ones that basically weren't accepted into Dalaran, and so decided to make their money joining up with bandits. The Brigand, it's interesting. It's kind of got like a peasant feel to it. Like the bottom of the chain. And then you've got the big beefy dudes. Ah, that's what I was worried about. Look, he actually highlighted for the Bandit Lord and ended up catching the Revenant. The Revenant seems to sort of have a strange selection ability. Bandit Lord looks pretty incredible, to be frank with you. Rock Golem. Not entirely sure the Bandit Lord fits in because we're so used to sort of seeing the Garrofosh/Knight model. These golems here are the best. They look really Warcrafty. That's super cool. I don't know what happened to his arm there. Poor guy. The kobolds look pretty good now. They look a bit more fleshed out, their face, compared to one of the pictures we saw. Ha! Those animations as well. They fit in. They got a lot of personality. I like it. And look at all the rubbish that they're holding on to. That's a kobold for you. Vicious little buggers. They still look like a pack a punch, though, if they swing that axe at you. So they're still a little bit of a threat. And they are. They're really annoying because they got Bash, the bigger ones. These kobold models are pretty good. They remind me a little bit like the Gnoll models. I feel like the Gnoll models are really fleshed out as well. Now we got like the arachnids, basically scorpions. And they are looking very cool. They kind of remind me a little bit of the elephants in this. How Blizzard have kind of made them sort of more clumped together, but it gives it their own unique flavor and look. So in the original they were also quite clumped, but in this they're sort of kind of stubby, but it looks kind of cool. Now we've got the dragon spawns. That one looking really derpy. This one looking just confused. So I'm not still completely sold on how the dragon spawn look face-wise. Model-wise, they are pretty cool. Especially that guy. I mean, look at the armor on him and everything. Like the spike sticking out, the weapon. He's got a very unique, cool look. Now we got the faceless ones. Back to the tentacles. Stop it, please. Now, on the faceless. Obviously, these portraits aren't finished, so I think people were getting upset with me, sort of like complaining. But obviously, I'm aware that stuff isn't finished, but for some reason, people seem to think that I'm not. All I can do is just commentate on what it is that I'm currently seeing and what can be done. They got a real kind of slimy look, and they sort of vibe in quite well. These ones are really nice. If you could get that good grass. Look at those. Very squid-like. Very gross. That's the sort of thing you would want to not come across in a dungeon. But that's what you're going to come across in a dungeon. Yeah, I like those ones. Okay, so onto the Magnetor. So these guys need a bit of work, portrait-wise as well as movement-wise. But the body types are very big, beefy. They kind of remind me a little bit of ogres, but with 4 legs in a way. They're these kind of big, muscular, yet tubby type characters. They throw a lot of weight around. This guy just looks incredible. And there you go. These are the mammoths. These are the elephants I was talking about. They got this kind of like almost stubby look to them. But I really like it. And then the Nerubians are incredible. Like, Blizzard obviously wanted the Nerubians to have a lot more flavor to them than just being spiders that were colored differently. So we can really identify that these are different to what we know from necessary crit fiends. Even though crit fiends are basically broken down. Although then again, are crit fiends going to look like that? I'm starting to wonder now. I wouldn't have thought they would, but who knows? Because the crit fiends are basically dead Nerubians, aren't they? So I'm not sure about that. Because these have definitely got very different legs. This guy only got 4 legs. He's not as powerful as the other ones. Little baby ones. Kind of looking really gross when they're very small. Them... Oh, hello. Is that polar bears? Because I don't think we've seen those before. Then you got Tuskars. So those are kind of cool little characters. They've got a very unique look to each one. So they've kind of got this gnoll/kobold feel where they're sort of fleshed out and got their own personality. So you can see they're all wearing different capes. Again, they could be passable as a playable race, to be quite frank with you. These models are all distinctly different enough to sort of give them their own class and capability. So obviously this guy would be like a warrior, sort of like a tanky type dude. Needs a little work on the movement. Then you got gnolls. Very cool characters. I mean... I'm a big fan of gnolls. It dates back to Baldur's Gate when I came across gnolls, and I had a lot of trouble trying to beat them when I was a kid. And they always stuck with me ever since. Sort of like dogs with high-end legs. Kind of scary things. The ogres, I've always felt like I don't quite get behind these models as much as I would like to. They look cool, but they just don't really remind me of ogres. They look like some sort of something a cross between an ogre and another type of creature. They don't... I mean, the armor sets and stuff, and the distinction between them is neat, with the armor and the weapons. But they feel like they're just too tall. They don't quite look tubby enough. They kind of... I don't know. They just don't really remind me of ogres. Then we've got Sasquatches, which are a really cool... adaptation of the Sasquatch that is in Warcraft 3. You got the Sasquatch, you got the Jungle Stalker, you got the Wendigo. They all share the same model. They're just skinned to be like white, green, and brown. Whereas Blizzard have actually taken those and given them a distinct new model. So the Sasquatches now look completely different from the Jungle Stalkers, which look completely different from the Wendigos. So these are really big, beefy creatures from the tundra. Then you've got the Jungle Stalkers, which are creepy, swamp-like bog men. So, and again, really cool looking, very different, very unique. I'm really appreciating the effort that's actually been put into distinguishing some of these models, because not only have they basically updated the models, they've actually made them... Essentially, they've kind of finished some of the unfinished work from before, because obviously, If this is what they intended back in the day, they obviously didn't have the time to do it. So Wendigo, Sasquatch, Jungle Stalker all look the same. Whereas in this, you can see they all look very different. Now these are the Wendigos, more humanoid, still kind of scary. They move around like gorillas, so it's kind of interesting. It looks fine when they're moving in a long distance. It just looks a bit weird if they're only moving like an inch. Then we got the Primal Pandorum, which is basically a Firbolg model, except now it's been updated a little bit. There's one of those in the game. I don't know if it's in Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, or TFT. There's a Clockwork Goblin you can see up there on the top left. Doesn't have an animation to it at the moment, but it's got the little Tinker Toy sort of keychain at the back. You would sort of turn it, and he's got a little spanner on him. So he's really enjoying the panda at the moment. Moving on to the crabs. So these are kind of cool. They look quite reminiscent of the original ones. Then there's the issue with the water elementals, which I do agree with you guys. Looks a little bit too like gel, as opposed to the natural flow of the water, which is always trying to force its way out. Whereas those look like they completely contain the water with no problem, as if it's a skin over the water. Now these guys, sea giants, look incredible. That guy obviously with the very realistic squid on the top of his head. It almost looks like it's still alive. What is going on there? The other guy's got a shark, so they're really cool, the sea giants. You can't go too far wrong with those bad boys. Chuck on a little bit of coral, give them a little bit of personality with their own hoods, and maybe change the colour of the beard, and Bob's your uncle. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to thumbs up the video, by the way. Subscribe, that really does help out a lot. I really appreciate all the comments you guys throw down as well. So I've been reading all the feedback, so doing my best to try to reply when I can, but bear in mind that I will read your comment regardless, because I have been doing that. I've been managing to keep up with it somehow. So really, really appreciate it, all the feedback. Thank you very much. Then we got the Macrura snappers, basically the lobsters, the lobstrocs. There's a weird one there. That's like a Murloc slave or something amongst those. Then we've got the ancient hydras, which I think I'm getting more used to. When I originally saw that one in particular, I felt it is like a king one in a way, but I felt like the horns is maybe a bit over the top on that big guy. They look kind of cute the way they move. I can get behind those though. There's not really too much to complain when it comes to hydras, let's face it. They're not exactly a super loved model. Then there's the mur'gul, which are like an offshoot of the murlocs. I actually don't know the lore behind the mur'gul versus the murlocs. I just know they're more in the Sunken Ruins temple. Sunken sort of city kind of template. But they obviously have their own slimy look, which fits in with them being fish-type creatures. Very vicious. Their little weaponry. You can see that guy looks like he's ready for war. Like a second in command or something. Thank you, Roma Invicta, for the sub. First channel on Twitch I ever subscribed to. Thanks for all the entertainment and stuff. You're welcome. Thank you very much for subscribing. We got the Shadowcaster. We got a doodad here, which is not supposed to be a Storm Reaver apprentice, surely. Apparently that is. So there we go. Confirmed. This is what the Storm Reaver apprentice is going to look like. So you're going to see that on the map Twilight Ruins. So just be careful when you come across that thing, because it looks pretty big. Yeah, you probably need a couple of officers to take it down. And even then it still puts up a bit of a fight. Looks like he's managed to defeat it. Here we have the Skeletal Orc Champions, which are pretty cool looking, to be frank with you. They look really beefy, obviously, despite being skeletons, because of all the armor. They're orcs, aren't they? They're beefy, they're strong regardless. Then you got Storm Reaver Hermit. I like the look at this guy's face. That looks like a really cool orc face right there. Not much animation to it at the moment. Oh, he's got a slightly different look. And then the turtles look kind of horrific. Not quite as cute as the originals, but they do look like turtles would look. I think that face is a little bit too monstrous. But then again, that's just me. Hello there, Gallus. How you doing? What are we moving on to now? He's probably getting lost. He's like, how many of these have I covered at this point? He's certainly covered a lot. He's just trying to find the next ones that he hasn't done. Got the High Elven architecture there, which you just saw. Guess he's going to play around with Arthas now whilst he tries to retain control of the situation. Thought I did this already. Well, you get a lot of different leaks, and some of it is covering over the same ground. Like, I've seen the pictures of the models, but I haven't necessarily seen them moving like this. See, you can see the vulture and the chicken, sort of the chicken pecking on the ground, so you get to see more of the kind of animation and how the creatures would behave, which is cool. And there you go. That's the end of the video. So thank you very much, Arcane there. Make sure to go to his channel and subscribe. He's definitely been getting a bit more sort of feedback as well from you guys, so I appreciate that. And make sure to thumbs up and subscribe this video if you enjoyed it. That is basically all of the models, how they kind of behave, how they breathe, how they... There are few of their standing animations. You kind of get to sort of flesh them out a little bit more rather than just looking at a static picture. That doesn't necessarily truly do them justice. So, thank you guys, and take care until the next video, because there's still plenty more to do. So, all the best. See you later.